Alrighty, thank you and welcome to this second video. Second video today, we're going to be doing specialized cells, but we're going to be doing plant cells this time. So last time we did animal cells, this time we did plant. So let's do some plant cells. Ooh, that's a different shade of red. Plant cells. So okay, I'm going to turn this a little bit brighter so that you guys can see it better. So there's only two plant cells that we actually need to know for the end of unit test. And the two plant cells that we need to know, one is called the Palisade cell. So it's Palisade. The Palisade cell. So basically what this cell is this cell, if you just imagine like a leaf. I'm going to try to draw a leaf really as good as I can, but I'm no artist. So imagine you've got a leaf. And typically, plants and leaves, not typically, they do, but I'm going to draw the sun up here in the corner, you know, how I used to draw a nice sun. There we go. That's a nice sun. It's beautiful. So, okay. So if you just imagine, we've got this leaf cell right here. And the top of that leaf cell, so this is the top. The top of the leaf cell likes to face towards the sun because that process that hopefully you know about a little bit about, photosynthesis, it absorbs sunlight and uses the sunlight as energy for a reaction. And the energy for the reaction is basically that it converts CO2 and H2O into glucose, which it eventually builds up into starch and different types of like storage materials and basically cell materials and oxygen. So it always takes in CO2, takes in CO2 and H2O, and it releases O2, oxygen, and glucose. So it takes in CO2 and H2O and releases oxygen and glucose. And this is the oxygen that we breathe, we as humans and all living animals. We breathe and we convert O2 back to CO2. So you can see it's kind of like a cyclic process, right? The plant produces O2 from CO2, and we breathe in the O2 and produce CO2, which the plant then reabsorbs, forms O2, and it's basically a cycle. This is Palisade cell. What it's specialized for is it's specialized for absorbing that light from the sun. So I'm going to draw it right over here. I like drawing in red because it shows a nice contrast. So the Palisade cell, I'm going to draw it a little bit bigger because it's more difficult to draw than the other one. So you draw one layer, and inside that one layer you draw a second layer. This is going to be a bit tougher for me on this trackpad. So you draw a second layer. Because plant cells, instead of just having one basically membrane, because remember in our last video we said that the cell membrane allows things to come inside and outside the cell, inside and outside the cell. But Palisade cells, we're looking at plant cells now, and plant cells have an additional membrane, which gives them rigidity and basically gives them additional protection against invasive species. So okay, then we're going to draw another layer on the inside. We're going to make sense of what this layer is in a second. And then we're going to talk about all these different parts. So we know that first part. I'm just going to change the color right here. We know this first part. It's in all cells. So in all cells, we've got the nucleus. We need something to control the functioning of the cells. So we've always got this nucleus. So nucleus will be in blue. Nucleus. And then we've got another thing. I'm going to draw around this nucleus. I basically draw them like little pills or something like that. There, there. And these are what will give that leaf the green color. And there's lots of them in leaf cells. That's why the leaves are usually typically very, very dark green. So the green, what we call them is we call them the chloroplasts. Chloroplasts. And what they do is these are the cells that absorb the sunlight. Absorb sunlight and basically allow the plant to have the energy to convert CO2 into O2. So chloroplasts absorb the sunlight. We've got the nucleus, chloroplast. And the different parts that we need now are basically this liquid here. It basically surrounds all of the cells. And this liquid also exists in animal cells. So it surrounds the nucleus. It surrounds all the cell. Basically minerals and basically anything the plant needs to survive, all of the energy is produced in here, all the chemicals are produced in here, and then transported to the different parts of the cell. So I'm not going to draw the yellow everywhere, but the yellow is what we call the cytoplasm. Basically, that's the site of chemical reactions that occurs in the liquid. Basically, the energy gets released, and the different cells will absorb what's produced, and basically use that to form their energy. And then finally, we're going to do the two different parts. Oh no, that wasn't supposed to happen. Let's go back to 8 maybe. 7 sounds right. So okay. So let's label these two different parts. So we said human cells had the cell membrane. I'm going to turn this down a little bit more. But additionally, plant cells have something that we call the cell wall. And like I said, this gives it some rigidity, and basically just gives it an extra layer of protection, the cell wall. And then the inside one, we call this the cell membrane. Cell membrane, which has the exact same name as in human and animal cells. Cell membrane. So we've got almost everything covered: the cell wall, the cell membrane, the chloroplasts, which absorb sunlight, the nucleus, which controls the cell, and then finally we've got this one piece on the inside. And it's basically filled with sap, and same thing, makes the cell a little bit more full and harder. That's why when plants dehydrate, they seem to sag down. And when they're hydrated, they seem to basically perk up. And what we call this the vacuole. And what the vacuole does is it basically just fills with liquid, and it can act basically as a storage, but fills with liquid to give the plant some rigidity. So these are all the different parts of the Palisade cell that we need to know. And we've got only one more cell that we need to cover. And it has the exact same structure as up here. It's got the vacuole, it's got the cell wall, the cell membrane. It doesn't have the chloroplasts, and we're going to talk about why it doesn't have the chloroplasts, but it has the nucleus, and it's got all the different parts. So let's go down here. Basically, we draw it, like a spike. A spike, and then the box at the end of that. So you can see it's got the same boxy shape, but the spike, I drew that pretty poorly. So just give me a second to erase the spike. I gotta find out where the erasing tool is. Let's see. There we go. So I'm gonna draw this spike a little bit better. It comes down. So it comes down. I'm just gonna draw the spike out and a lot bigger than I drew it, because then it'll be easier to draw this. So I would say on the outside is the cell wall. On the inside of the cell wall is the exact same thing. It's the cell membrane on the inside of the wall. Ooh, that was I done goofed. There we go. And inside that, we've got the vacuole, which gives it the rigidity. We've got the nucleus, which I'll draw in another color. And we've got the cytoplasm, which is all the liquid contained in this part. So I'm just going to label these very, very quickly, and then we'll talk about why it's different. Vacuole. On the outside, we've got the cell wall. And the inside, we've got the cell membrane. So we've got the inside cell membrane, outside cell wall, and the vacuole. And right here, we've got the nucleus. Okay. So why this one doesn't have chloroplasts is what we call this. We call this a root, which should tell you almost why it doesn't have chloroplasts. Root hair cell. So root tells you that it's underground. Underground. Hair, it's got thin hairs sticking out. And a cell, cell basically just tells us that it's looking at the basic building blocks. So the root, it's underground, so that's why it doesn't have chloroplasts, right? Not many plants, no plants can absorb sunlight underground. You need to be in the sun in order to absorb sunlight. So root hair cells, they're in the roots, so they cannot absorb any sunlight. So there's no use in the plant expending its energy to build chloroplasts underground. So it's evolved in this way to absorb sunlight where sunlight is available. But you'll see this different function is that we have this root hair cell. And what this cell is it's very thin. So I'm going to draw this part. It's very, oops, oh no, that doesn't look good. It's very thin. So what this allows is when it's very thin, any minerals in the soil, we can have calcium, we can have magnesium, really anything that the plant needs to absorb. We fertilize the soil, or the soil is naturally fertile. Anything can easily be transported into the cell. And then from here, it goes up the xylem to the top of the plant, where the plant uses it to react. And calcium and magnesium can easily come in because this is very, very thin. The thicker it is, the more energy the plant needs to expel in order to bring it inside. And then the second part is that, important for photosynthesis is that H2O can also easily enter the cell. So these are why, if you've ever, took a tree out of the ground or taken a small plant out of the ground, we've got the top of the tree, and under the tree, right, we've always got the thick roots, and off these thick roots, we've always got these little tiny like hairs that look like they're hanging off of it. I don't know if you've ever weeded your garden before, but you can see, when you've got a thistle, which is those ones with the spikes on the outside that kind of hurt, when you pull them out of the ground, you'll see it doesn't really have any thick cells. It's just got root hairs everywhere coming out from the bottom of it, just so that it can anchor itself better in the ground. It increases the surface area that it's in contact with the soil, and on top of that, water can come in very easily, and it could basically absorb all the nutrients from the soil better than anything else that's in your garden. So yeah, that's the basics of the two plant cells we need to know. We need to know the Palisade cell, and we need to know the root hair cell, and a little bit of the function. So this one's very thin, so that minerals and water can easily enter the cell and be transported up to the top of the plant. And that the Palisade cell has chloroplasts, and the use of the chloroplasts is that they convert CO2 and H2O, carbon dioxide and water, into oxygen, which we breathe, and glucose, which the plant uses to build up. The plant uses it to breathe and build its own cells. So okay, that's the last one. I will send you guys a worksheet tomorrow, and you can work on that during class time. Alrighty, have a good day.